So a good 20 years, almost 20 years after
Almost
The
20
Last
years,
Crusade, they decided to bring him back. So it's Lucasfilm. You know, they brought back Star Wars by doing the prequels. It had a modicum of success, one could say, enough box office anyway to make it worthwhile. So after they've made another 3 Star Wars films, where are you going to go after that? Well, let's see if Harrison's interested in bringing Indiana Jones back. Turns out the check was big enough, and like we mentioned earlier, he likes the character. So is Steven on board? Yeah, Steven's on board. Steven's going to do it. Is Johnny Williams going to write the theme? Yeah, Johnny's in. How about some of the old crew? Well, yeah, we're bringing back Karen Allen this time. Marion Ravenwood. Wow. Yeah, we loved her. Brilliant. Bring her back. Let's have a bit of that. And we've got Cate Blanchett. The Russians this time are the baddies. But that's sort of time appropriate because it would have moved on into the 1950s. So, yeah, this is quite a few years after. He's more of an aging college professor now. Doesn't do as many adventures by the sounds of it in his life.
A teacher? Part-time.
I mean, that first opener, you've got the Area 51, and there's a few callbacks to things like the Ark of the Covenant's in there somewhere.
Yeah.
That was kind of a cool opener, I thought.
It was a very cool opening.
Even the lead-lined fridge and the nuclear explosion, I can accept it. I still thought it was cool.
Yeah, I loved that sequence, but I mean the opening bit with there's a lot of callbacks in that warehouse, and the whole setup is a cool way to start the movie. Sets us where we are and everything. Introduces us to Ray Winston's character. Mac early on, and gets us going. When he reaches that nuclear testing facility, the
Nuketown.
Nuketown, which, you know, I just think of games like Call of Duty and stuff whenever
Exactly.
see it.
That's why I think, that sort of thing's definitely been inspired by it, hasn't it?
But I thought it was a really funny sequence going in and then realising that they're all fake. And
it was really well shot, and I thought it came together really well.
And I know loads of people. I remember at the time, because this is the first indie film I saw at the cinema, the only indie film I seen in the cinema, and and I remember at the time after it came out, everyone going, "Oh, it's so stupid! That wouldn't happen. That wouldn't work." Blah blah blah, taking it so seriously.
Yeah.
And I was just like, "It was cool. Who cares?" you know.
I have reservations about it, but they're more towards the end of the film than that bit at the start. That bit at the start was okay. It was good. It was good fun. It was good fun to see, like, you know, him back in the hat, doing the things that we love to see him do, you know, swinging from the whip and punching out the bad guys and having a car chase and the rest of it and all that. And fighting that big Russian as well. You know, they have that huge scrap before they fall onto that jet engine thing, and that blows them into the desert, and it's kind of cool.
I think the biggest objection to this film, and probably one of my problems at the time, was Shia LaBeouf, because
actual cannibal Shia
LaBeouf. Remembered at the time that the biggest thing he was in at that moment was the Transformers. And I detested Transformers, and a lot of people obviously did, you know. And
I only watched the first one, and it was all right, but I didn't love it. I grew up with the cartoon, so I should have loved it, and I didn't love it.
Yeah.
Michael Bay bollocks, fucking.
Well, that's it, because it's Michael Bay, and I think that's what with them films is like, oh, God. But I think his attachment to those obviously sullied him in everyone's eyes, and so him being in this film at that moment in time, you know, this is before all of his kind of cult stuff he did in a bit later with Cannibal, Shia LaBeouf and all that. That because of that, you know, that sullied it a bit. And people were just like, "Oh, fucking not him," you know. And I think that was what was the detriment, particularly at the time. I think that was probably the biggest objection.
Well, it was what they were trying to do was invert that whole father and son thing, But this time, Indy's the father, obviously, and he's the son. And it was sort of, of the time, he was like in the 50s, so he was like a young sort of teenage rocker, wasn't he? Biker dude with his Elvis hair and all that, and his flick knife. And
a greaser.
Yeah, a greaser. Can't you get him for your greasy head?
Get this guy.
Who?
Joe College hit him hard.
Here, hold this. What?
But they brought Calvin Allen back, and I tell you what, I tell you, annoyed me more in it than Shia LaBeouf was Ray Winstone. I love him as an actor, but I wasn't really sold on him in it. He was a bit like, you don't know him, you don't know him, you don't know him. Well, whatever. Basically, the whole thing wasn't that we're going to do Aliens this time, and Spielberg said to Lucas, "No, we're not doing Aliens. We've both done Aliens. I've done Close Encounters. You've done Star Wars. Well, let's not bring Indiana Jones into that world." So Lucas went away and thought about it, and he come back and he said, "We're not doing Aliens." And Spielberg was like, "Yes, we're doing interdimensional beings."
Okay,
and,
George.
And fair dues for the. I think it's the documentary on this actual copy of it that Spielberg tells that story, and they left it in.
Yeah.
It was like kind of rolling his eyes at George Lucas and his silly ideas. But it does harm it. It just makes it stupid, really. I mean, it's not a very good conclusion. Even John Hurt in there. You got John Hurt in there, one of our greatest actors.
Yes.
He couldn't elevate. It was a waste of John Hurt, really. Made him kind of some sort of idiot savant in a way.
Yeah. Well, that whole thing was really stupid and a real shame. And the end of the movie, once you get to that ending sequence of the film, like the third, and by the time you get to that last part with the whole fucking temple spinning, and it's so stupid. You just think, oh, what a wasted opportunity.
Yeah. Sort of just farted its way out of trouble, really. You had all those Russians being eaten by the ants. And not really much else happening. No one's face melted. The pyramid collapses. That's kind of cool. There's cool elements there with the whole like pyramid, the way it sort of the mechanisms of it, and all the stone moving and the sand that was kind of cool, but it wasn't cool enough to stop it from being a turkey of an ending.
No,
and then the fucking flying saucers taking off at the end. It was just like, oh, it looks nice, but that's all.
I guess it's because there was no there was no proper object that was like really iconic that they're going after, which was one of the problems, I think. And in terms of villains, there's not a real proper villain.
Kate Blanchett is the villain.
But she's but like, you know how like the first and the third, it's the Nazis, and like a proper force that seem to be going after. It doesn't feel like that, because by the ending you've got these aliens that you've not even seen yet, and it just seems a bit like
It seems like in the past it was Hitler that wanted the Ark of the Covenant because of his occult thing that we mentioned earlier, and then we said with the Last Crusade you could understand them wanting the Holy Grail because it gives you eternal life and they can give it to all the troops. But with this one, it seemed like it was her character's obsession to find this artifact, which ended up being like an alien artifact. I mean, if you're going to do it, that's where you start in Area 51 and you do all that kind of side of it. But just where it ended up going was bollocks, wasn't it?
It was.
It was a load of bollocks. It was a shame because when it was first sort of touted and they did all the usual featurettes and the trailers and stuff, it's like, oh, this is going to be great. But I couldn't help but I felt like that coming out of The Phantom Menace, though. It was like, I enjoyed it. There was elements to it that I really enjoyed. But overall, as a film, I don't think it was as good as the other stuff, the old stuff. And that's how I felt coming out of Crystal Skull. It was a bit like, what a shame.
A real shame.
If you have enjoyed this video, please consider supporting us at buymeacoffee.com or join us on Patreon. All links below.